The views, opinions, and content of this show are those of the host, guests, and callers. They do not necessarily reflect those of Local Matters Broadcasting, LLC, its owners, partners, affiliates, assigns, or heirs. Having said that, it's now time to say good morning, St. Johns County. Welcome to the weekly radio show of the St. Johns County Council on Aging, better known in our community as the COA. We are your local nonprofit agency who for the past 50 years has been leading and advocating for the dignity, independence, health, and community involvement of older St. Johns County residents. I'm Brian Robinson, Program Director for COA, broadcasting to you live from the studio of WFOY, 102.1 FM, your local radio station for news, sports, and talk. Before we get into our show, let me remind everyone that if you have a question, a comment, or a suggestion for a radio show topic, please send your email to radio@coasjc.org. Again, that's radio@coasjc.org. And as I do every week, I do have my email up in front of me, so if you have a question during the radio show, feel free to email it to me as well. radio@coasjc.org. Well, we have a Veterans Day theme show this morning, and joining me for this theme show is retired Brigadier General Mike Flynn. A native of Jacksonville, Florida, he has been serving our country and community for over 40 years. In the Marine Corps, he joined as an enlisted Marine and, after 3 meritorious promotions and achieving the rank of sergeant in 19 months of service, attended officer candidate school through the enlisted commissioning program. General Fleming then served in numerous leadership roles, rising to the rank of captain before transferring to the Florida Army National Guard. Upon entering the Florida Army National Guard, General Fleming served in various command and staff positions. Highlights of his service include 2 tours at the Pentagon, selection as the first National Guard Congressional Fellow, Battalion Commander, National Guard Bureau Chief of Legislative Liaison, Harvard University National Security Fellow, and Chief of Staff of the Florida Army National Guard. Since his retirement from the military in 2010, General Fleming has continued serving veterans. He is a nationally recognized expert in military veteran outreach programs, a founding member of Veterans on Wall Street, founder of the Jacksonville Military Veterans Coalition that connects military veterans with employment opportunities, and founder of Northeast Florida Military Veteran College Network that connects military veterans with education opportunities. He developed a comprehensive military veterans outreach program plan that Liberty Mutual, Farmers Insurance, HCL, and other companies utilize to enhance their outreach program. He was inducted into the Florida Veterans Hall of Fame in 2023, and he currently serves as the outreach manager for the COA Veterans Network. So if there is anyone who loves our veterans and is qualified to speak about issues pertaining to veterans, it is my good friend, Mike Fleming. Mike, welcome to the show.
Brian, thanks so much. Really appreciate you having me on and talk about veterans. It's close to Veterans Day, and many people kind of wonder what they can do or how they can support veterans. So look forward to our conversation because I think we can give some people practical things they could do to support their veterans in their sphere of influence.
All right. Well, I have some great questions for you. But one of the things I like to do in the first portion of our show is just let our listeners get to know a little bit about you personally. I've already read a wonderful bio about you and your career, but I'd love for them to just kind of learn a little bit more about you personally, especially like the number of years that you've been in St. Johns County.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Jacksonville and always loved St. Augustine. I remember coming down for my high school prom, and some listeners remember the Ponce de Leon Lodge out on US North, US 1. Took my date, I think it was a junior prom for that. So always loved St. Augustine. And then when my wife and I would come down here after we got married, lived in Jacksonville and loved St. Augustine. And so I went through my second tour at the Pentagon. I was chosen for the position of Chief of Staff of the Florida Army National Guard. So moved down here from Washington area here to St. Johns County in 1998. And my wife and I have been here ever since. Both my children went to St. Augustine High School, loved it there. And then even after I retired from the military, even though I worked in Jacksonville, we decided St. Augustine was the place for us. So we've been very blessed to live here in St. Augustine, St. Johns County now. Gosh, whatever that is, 25, 26 years, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, so when you were coming back to the area in 98, I was leaving the area because I went to Trinity Baptist College in Jacksonville, Florida from 95 to 98, and upon graduation moved back home to West Virginia to work in a church and then eventually start a church. And then but my wife and I, St. Augustine was our date place, right?
Yep.
And whenever we had a little bit of free time while in college. we would come down to St. Augustine for our date nights, and we said we would love to retire here someday, right? And so then we're back home in West Virginia. Her parents, early 60s, both got ill, passed away. And, we're sitting around one day and we're like, we might get to retirement age and not get to move to St. Augustine.
Right, not get to enjoy it.
And so just a little bit of history here. I started looking for jobs. I applied for a job at the Focus Group here in St. Augustine, which is a consulting firm that helps nonprofits all across the country. And that's where we first got to meet, because you worked there for a short period of time as well. And so just fun to, see how St. Augustine has grown over the years.
Oh, it's amazing. I remember elementary school, we took a train from Jacksonville down to St. Augustine. The cool thing was obviously being on the train, but it was almost nothing between Jacksonville and St. Augustine, and now there's so much there. So it's great. And like I said, I'm very blessed to still be here in St. Johns County, and then also being able to do some work with veterans and also sometimes active duty personnel.
Yeah, and so the population has certainly grown and continues to grow, and with that continues to age. And so that's one of the things that we're doing at Council on Aging is strategic planning, trying to make sure that we are prepared to best serve our seniors. And so, I mentioned before we came on the air that we do serve veterans.
Right.
We have a number of veterans that participate in our programs, but we're not specifically focused on veterans and certain areas, how we serve them. And so I thought it would be great to have you on the show. We'll talk about some of these different things coming up here during the hour. But we're going to go ahead. We're going to take our first break. When we come back, lots of questions for retired Brigadier General Mike Fleming. We'll be right back after these messages. And welcome back to the weekly radio show, the St. Johns County Council on Aging, here on WFOY 102.1 FM, your local radio station for news, sports, and talk. Today is our Veterans Day theme show. I'm Brian Robinson, Program Director for COA. Joined this morning by retired Brigadier General Mike Fleming. And lots of questions for you this morning, so let me just jump in to the first one that I have for you. So according to Pew Research, there are more than 18 million living veterans in the United States, representing about 6% of the country's adult population. One would think that serving 6% of our adult population will be a task that our government could easily handle. Yet some reports indicate that the Department of Veterans Affairs is still struggling to provide veterans with timely health care. So as you interact with veterans, are you finding this to be the case?
The VA overall does really a tremendous job. The professionals that work at the VA are really work diligently. We're very fortunate. The VA is set up in various regions. Ours is North Florida, South Georgia. And the team that they have is tremendous. And it just like any organization, it rises and falls on leadership. And we're very fortunate here. As you know, we have here in St. Johns County out on State Road 207, we have a clinic there, tremendous clinic there. And then we have great leaders. Josh Pridgeon is the VA leader who's in charge of all the different VAs in North Florida, South Georgia. And he's a true professional, works very diligently. And the VA's made some additional investments in North Florida, South Georgia. They just opened up around the Jacksonville Airport, a new facility, and they have something called a domiciliary, and that is where people can stay, overnight inpatient care. So they've really expanded the commitment to Northeast Florida. There are, however, sometimes challenges, and just like with any organization, capacity can be a challenge, and depending on the capacity of a particular VA facility, you could have a wait there, and so it's. But overall, the people who work at the VA are fantastic. They are committed to serving the veterans, and so overall, I would say from my experience with the VA, it's been very positive with them from a medical standpoint when I had to get some things. But overall, I think they do a good job, and really they're very much open to fixing problems. Mm-hmm. So if you have a veteran, if you are a veteran, or if you have a veteran who's a family member who says, "Look, I can't get anything done at the VA," let the leadership in the VA know. If you want, contact me. I'm glad to connect you with somebody with the VA. But like I said, it's just like any organization, rises and falls on leadership. And we're fortunate here in North Florida, South Georgia, to have an outstanding VA leadership team.
And then So, I provided you questions ahead of time so that we can come prepared. But as we talk, other questions pop into my mind. And so I guess another question would be funding. I mean, does that come into play as well? Like I know like at COA, we have limited funding. And so therefore there's only a limited amount of people that we can serve. And so we have a number of people on the wait list. Yeah. So does that come into play as well at the VA?
Not really. And thanks for that, Brian. I should mention that because with a veteran, work with the VA is called an earned benefit, right? This is not a gift that someone has given someone. You join the military, you serve honorably, and you have an earned benefit of VA benefits. Now, the VA is more than health care. I've used it for the GI Bill. I used it for a mortgage. I've used it for different things. Health care is a big part of it. But what unfortunately happens is for our veterans sometimes, and particularly older veterans, their thought process is, well, I served in the 50s or the 60s, and, if I register with the VA for health care, then I'm taking away, it's a plus-minus situation. A soldier who was in Afghanistan who was really badly injured, I'm taking away from him. And that's completely untrue. The funding for the VA is based on the number of veterans that register and everything. So it's really not a plus-minus from that in the sense that a veteran registers and takes something away from another veteran. Because one of the things that if I was talking about service in the military, I would get rid of the word only. Because my brother's father-in-law was in the Navy in the mid-'50s, and Mr. Bersinger never registered for VA to do anything. And so my sister-in-law called my wife and said, look, Mike's in the military, you can tell him about the VA. And so we had them contact they live in Jacksonville, so they went up to the Jacksonville military department and got some great help. Because the VA has a number of programs. They actually have a caregiver program that, depending on the circumstances, can pay for things in the home for a caregiver, and also actually pay a relative or someone to care for a veteran. And so we got that set up for Mr. Bersinger, my brother's father-in-law, and then we asked him. I said, "Look, why didn't you register for that?" He says, "Well, I was only in the Navy for 4 years. I never served in combat. And I didn't want to take anything away from somebody else." So that was a terrible story because he, in the sense that he got the care and he got all his benefits there when he registered. But as a veteran, you have to register. And I tell veterans when I give speeches sometimes, said, "Look, you owe it to your family to register with the VA and get an assessment. There may be some disability or some other things involved, but find out what the programs are." Because as we all age, and I'm aging. Fortunately, I don't need any assistance right now. My wife gives me plenty of assistance and guidance right now. You know her. But it's to really make sure that you take care of those earned benefits, and it's also for your family. Because if you got this caregiver program, which is a wonderful program, you have the opportunity to use it, then you're helping your family take care of you. And so but the overall funding has greatly increased, and one of the other aspects of it, the battlefield medical capabilities has tremendously increased throughout. Obviously, history, medical each day is getting better, but from a military standpoint, we have soldiers, Marines, sailors, people who survived some kind of accident or enemy action or some kind of event that perhaps, in World War II or even Vietnam may not have survived. And so the VA had to adapt to this new environment. We all had to adapt to it. And I know we're going to talk about some organizations that help. But what we do is we really look at all these different organizations as we all partner together. And I get back to North Florida, South Georgia, where we are now, and the team there is a great VA team because they know that they can't do everything for everybody. And I just give you one example. The VA can provide care for veterans, but they don't provide any kind of care for the families. And so where I work with COA Veterans Network, we provide outpatient mental health care for active duty veterans, National Guard, Reserve, and military families. Quite often, we end up with a veteran, maybe he's having good care from a mental health standpoint through the VA, fantastic. But if you're in a situation where you need some help, maybe not where you need to be, if you're not bringing your family along at the same time from a mental health standpoint, there may be a disconnect. Wife may look at husband, look, I'm glad you're getting better, but you put us through hell for 4 or 5 years, and we're not where you need to be. So sometimes we, COA Veterans Network, will provide the care for that family from a mental health standpoint. And so the VA loves that because it's a partnership. They know they can't do everything. So that's where, I think we all learn in the military from the day one, and I'm a Marine and a soldier, a little bit odd, but both. But when you go to Parris Island, what they do is, number one, they cut off all your hair, which is kind of funny, but the Marines in boot camp don't let you use the word I. Now, you're not get a chance to talk much. You're mostly spoken to and yelled at and everything. But you would say the private requests permission to speak, because they want to take you out of the mindset of I and say the private, you're part of an organization. And so I think every event in different services have their different ways of doing it, but it's a team effort. The emphasis is on team, not on the individual. Well, most of us as veterans carry that after we get out of the military, and so in the veteran space, it's a kind of a veteran ecosystem, and we all work together. And the VA is kind of the big brother because they do so many different things. But you have organizations like COA Veterans Network, you have Wounded Warrior Project, Canines for Warriors, Operation New Uniform, Mission United, the Fire Watch, which we'll talk about when we talk about veteran suicide. But it's truly a team effort. And if we don't have that team effort, we're not reaching all the veterans, because COA Veterans Network, we do great work from a mental health. Our clinicians only see military clients, and so they're very proficient in understanding the military experience. But we don't provide housing. We don't provide food. We don't provide employment. But what we can do, we have case managers, and Diane Stover in Jacksonville is absolutely wonderful. The case manager can connect to those services. But if we try to do everything at COA Veterans Network, we probably wouldn't do a very good job at all. And that's why we depend on the VA, in the same way the VA depends on COA Veterans Network. It depends on different organizations to help. So it's truly a team commitment when we're talking about veterans.
Yeah, and we're happy to do what little part that we can do. I was talking before we came on the air. We have our adult daycare center, and that's for most of the folks that are in there. They've had some sort of diagnosis that's where they're being affected cognitively, right? And so folks with dementia or maybe Parkinson's or something like that, and they're at a point where they can't be left at home alone, but their caregiver really needs a break, right? They need that respite. They need to take care of themselves. They need to go grocery shopping. They need to go to a doctor's appointment, whatever. And so our adult daycare center is a place. It's a secured facility. It's CNAs that take care of them. It's run by a registered nurse. And it's just they do different activities throughout the day while they're there, and it's just a great place for them. And the VA provides veterans the opportunity to come there. Like, they pay for them to come there, and so it feels good to do a small part in helping our veterans.
No, that's tremendous, and then it gets back to the earlier point we were discussing, is you have to be registered with the VA to get those benefits. I mean, that sounds like an obvious statement. But I think the VA sometimes gets criticized for people who haven't not supporting a particular veteran or that. But just because you served in the military, the VA may not be aware of you, will not be aware of you. And this is a big point.
Hold that thought. We got music playing. That means we got to take our next commercial break. We'll be right back after these commercial messages. And welcome back to the weekly radio show, the St. Johns County Council on Aging, here on WFOY 102.1 FM, your local radio station for news, sports, and talk. Today is our Veterans Day theme show. I'm Brian Robinson, Program Director for COA, joined this morning by retired Brigadier General Mike Fleming. Prior to the commercial break, you were talking about the importance of registering with the VA.
Absolutely. First, thanks for playing an intro of a Jacksonville band with Leonard Skinner. So
you're very welcome. Yes, I actually have no control over the music.
It worked out great. So, what I was going to say about the VA, when I retired in 2010 from the military, if you'd asked me, am I registered with the VA, I would have said yes, because I'd had the GI Bill and I had a VA home loan. I was not registered, however, with the Veterans Health Administration. So when you're registered, it's a different registration within the VA for different programs. So I really just want to emphasize to make sure you're registering for health benefits specifically, and then that way, I'm talking during the break, like this VA caregiver program and things like that. You don't know what you're eligible for until you get registered, and then the VA will take you through it. But they have a variety of programs that can assist veterans. And this is not just, I've talked about the VA caregiver program. Really, I emphasize, hey, if you were in the military 4 or 5 years and you just got out and you're 25 or 26, register with the VA now and get that. And, it may not be disability or any kind of payment, but you get registered, because the only way the VA can help you is registering with the VA.
And then is it a one-time registration? Or
yeah.
Is it, okay.
Once
registered, always
you're
registered.
registered, and then they'll make an assessment. Like with me, I was in the military like 35 or 36 years, so you go through a physical and assessment, and so the VA has a specific process. But this isn't something you have to renew every year or anything like that. Once you're in the VA system, you're in the VA system, and then you can move forward with that. But again, you may not know what you're eligible for until you get registered, and the VA can assist you.
All right. I'd like to shift gears to a very serious topic, and that is suicide. The website stopsoldiersuicide.org states that veterans are 72% more likely to commit suicide than those who never served, and suicide is the second leading cause of death in veterans under the age of 45. The COA Veterans Network, where you serve as outreach manager, is a network of clinics that provides confidential, personalized, evidence-based mental health care to veterans, service members, and their families. So if you would take some time, educate our listeners about the COA Veterans Network Clinic. You already talked a little bit about it, but talk a little bit more about it there in Jacksonville and how they're serving those that are dealing with depression and thinking about suicide.
Yeah, I'll talk about the COA Veterans Network, and then also talk a little bit about something called the Fire Watch with the scourge of veteran suicide. But COA Veterans Network was founded by Steve Cohen. He's a hedge fund philanthropist, actually owns the New York Mets. And so his son had been in the Marine Corps, and he wanted to do something to honor his son's service. So Mr. Cohen has invested now over $400 million to create a series of clinics across the United States. We have 22 clinics in the network. We have one in Jacksonville, close to one here in Jacksonville. We actually have one in Tampa, but it's coanveteransnetwork.org. And we provide outpatient mental health care for veterans, National Guard, Reserve, active duty members, and all military families. And, I personally have been through marriage counseling. I've been through some individual counseling. And it's important we talk about that because most of the time I was in the military, if you hurt yourself, or let's say you're out on a company run and you sprained your ankle or you broke your ankle and there's a bone sticking out, no one says, "Hey, Marine, hey, soldier, tough it out for the rest of your life. Be tougher. Don't get any care for that." We would, of course, go get your ankle fixed, and everybody would think that would be a normal thing to do. The military was not good at encouraging people, though, on the mental health side. And if you talked about kind of feelings and things, you were like radioactive, because no one Fleming's talking about feelings. That is changing. The military, as I understand, I retired 14 years ago, so I'm not obviously as connected, but it's an emphasis item now when I talk about it, is that counseling has been very productive for me. I've been fortunate to be married 40 plus years to an angel, so that helps also. But one of the big parts is you have to take that first brave step. And with COA Veterans Network, we provide outpatient mental health care, and it could be for any number of things that have happened during the military experience. The military, there's a terrible thing with military sexual trauma, and sometimes you may have a female veteran who maybe had an incident occur during her service, yet it was years later that it resurfaces in some way. And so we can provide care for that. So we provide care at the COA Veterans Network for the not only the veteran, but also his or her family. And one of the unique things we do, we allow the client to find his or her family, because sometimes it could be a neighbor is a big part of it. Could be an uncle, could be a mom, could be a dad, because we literally see people, we see children from age 3 up to, we don't have a limit, 90, whatever it is for the veteran. We have that. So we allow the client to find his or her family, because if an individual is really helping a veteran, and needs also some care from a mental health standpoint, we want to make sure we're providing that. So we provide both individual counseling, marriage counseling. We have groups. We have all kind of different ways that we can assist. And one of the other great parts about this is we don't believe that there should be any barriers to care. And so from a financial standpoint, we ask about insurance for sustainment purposes. But if someone cannot afford either the care or maybe co-pays, we can waive those fees. We have a fund specifically for that. And then we have case managers. In this case, Diane Stover is the wonderful case manager in Jacksonville. And what Diane's role is, the case managers connect to other services because some people may need more than the outpatient mental health, maybe inpatient mental health, maybe something else. It doesn't have to be additional medical care, but we want to make sure connect to the services like we talked about before. So, Cohen Veterans Network, 22 different clinics across the United States, CohenVeteransNetwork.org, tremendous organization. But again, it's a collaborative effort. We do something very well, outpatient mental health, outstanding. But if we didn't have other partners who could do things like maybe housing or food or something else a veteran might need, then that would be the challenge. And you talked a little bit about veteran suicide. That's a scourge. It's terrible. And it's estimates for between 18 to 22 veterans of all eras we're losing per day. And so that's just it's a tragedy. And so one of the things that we've created here in Northeast Florida, now we're taking it across Florida, is something called the Fire Watch. Rory Diamond was the head of Canines for Warriors. He's a Jacksonville City Councilman, and Rory had an idea that how can we own that challenge of veteran suicide in Northeast Florida? So he created the Fire Watch, and it was the 5 counties in Northeast Florida. It was Duval, St. Johns, Nassau, Clay, and Baker County. And we each one of the counties had a representative. I was the St. John's representative and then was the chair. And we started with a blank slate and said, okay, what can we do? Because we didn't want to become a call center. We didn't have the funding to do big things, but what could we do differently? And so we thought, okay, how can we reach the 90%, engage the 90% of people who've never been in the military? And you read statistics. It could be 6%, it's 6 to 8%, some 10%. But we said, how can we engage the 90%? Because if we surround veterans with a sea of goodwill and have the ability to have everyone involved, not just fellow veterans.
All right, hold that thought again.
Yep.
That music means time for our next commercial break. So we'll be right back after these commercial messages. And welcome back to the final segment of the weekly radio show of the St. Johns County Council on Aging here on WFOY 102.1 FM, your local radio station for news, sports, and talk. Today is our Veterans Day theme show. I'm Brian Robinson, Program Director for COA, joined this morning by retired Brigadier General Mike Fleming. Prior to our break, you were talking about the Fire Watch. If you want to conclude your thoughts on that.
For the Fire Watch, like I said, our challenge was to address the scourge of veteran suicide here in Northeast Florida. And so what we decided to do was engage the 90% of the population who've never served in the military but would like to do something, because I've talked to countless people who said, look, I love veterans. What do you want me to do? And so what we did, we created something called the Fire Watch program, and it'd be a watchstander. And in the military, the Fire Watch, you are awake, you're standing watch. We did this in boot camp in the military, in the Marine Corps many years ago. You're awake in case there's a fire when everybody else is asleep. You're standing watch for them. And, from a Christian standpoint, it's stand in the gap. You're standing in the gap for them. So that's what the Fire Watch means. And a watchstander, we created this watchstander program. And it's about an hour's worth of training. And you learn about the military, you learn about the scourge of suicide, and then we ask you to get engaged in the lives of your veterans. We've had over 7,000 people go through this, but if you go to thefirewatch.org, you can become a watchstander. We say invest an hour so you can be a support for your veterans, because Monday's Veterans Day, and so people are going to be thinking about veterans. What could I do? And I'm giving you orders right now. I can't order civilians around, and most people in the military won't listen to me anyway, but I'll give my order here. And what I'd love for you to do is go to thefirewatch.org, invest an hour, learn about the military, and then get engaged with the lives of your veterans. And the same way the involvement you would have with any kind of friend who maybe wasn't themselves. You play golf every Saturday, and all of a sudden your veteran doesn't want to play golf at all, gets withdrawn. Get engaged. So, and then the other part is if you do that, but call one of your veteran friends around Veterans Day. Just think, if everyone listening would just do that, call one veteran friend that you have, just check in. Maybe or text, you haven't talked to them in a while, just check in on them. Because people, kind of like around Christmas, people end up with different emotions. Christmas, normally if you're a kid, obviously it's just joy, it's all presents. But sometimes Christmas is a sad time for some people. Well, sometimes Veterans Day is a sad time for people because they started thinking about different things, maybe a veteran they lost, different ways and emotions. So, become a watchstander, invest in our thefirewatch.org, and then also call one of your veteran friends this weekend to honor their service and just to be a friend for them.
That's great. All right, well, I want to shift gears to another topic that's very important for our last segment here, and that is homelessness among veterans. In 2023, a little over 20,000 veterans were living in shelters throughout the United States, and another 15,500 were living without any shelter at all. So it's sad to me that there are men and women who served in our armed forces and have no place to live. So are there government programs or nonprofits that assist veterans with housing?
Yeah, we talked about the VA. The VA has programs for homelessness, specific programs that they do. We're very fortunate here in St. Johns County. Bill Dudley is, we laughingly call him kind of the king of veterans. We all work for him in St. Johns County willingly because Bill is so wonderful of a leader. And Bill led the effort to create something called Veterans Village. It's on the island, and it's for veterans with homelessness. And Bill led the effort, got it through the state legislature, and it's now up and running. So that's also a program for Veterans Village. But again, it's get registered with the VA as the start point for that with homelessness. And then in Jacksonville, there's something called 5-Star Veterans Center. Colonel retired Lynn Leving, he was a commander, Marine colonel who was the commander of Blunt Island Command many years ago. But Lynn and his wife Susie run 5-Star Veterans Center, and they do that. And both Veterans Village and 5-Star Veterans Center, and really all the programs, are designed not to have that be permanent housing, because everybody needs a helping hand and a hand up at different times. But I know the 5-Star Veterans Center very well. Been there a number of times, and their goal is to stabilize you, get you back on your feet, and then get you a trade, and then get you out and be independent again. Because none of us, all of us appreciate when we get a helping hand, but on the other hand, we want to feel like we're productive. And veterans are the same way. And so, the challenge sometimes of veteran homelessness is I don't know where to turn, can do that. So, which leads me to talk here in St. Johns County. Mac McDermott is the County Veteran Service Officer, and they're out at the county offices. So, if you have a question about as a veteran or a family member, call Mac and his staff. And because I call those what Mac does, he's like a pentathlete. He has to know about every veteran program. And if he doesn't know, he and his staff are going to find out and give you the right answer. So, just don't sit there if you're a veteran or even a family member wondering, my grandfather passed away. I really don't know what to do. I know he was in the Army, but my father's passed away. But what do I do? Mac and his team are there to help here in St. Johns County and do a wonderful job. We also have something called Mission United. United Way of Northeast Florida helped create that. If you call 211, one of the questions you would be asked is, have you or a family member ever served in the military? If the answer is yes, then you will be connected to the group of case managers that are specifically there and trained for veterans. Mm. And one of the challenges, Brian, sometimes with nonprofits is that if a veteran doesn't know about a program specifically designed for veterans, he or she will use whatever non-veterans can use. Mm-hmm. Well, that kind of takes, for those nonprofits, many of them, you talk about COA and others, they don't have unlimited funds, obviously, mm-hmm. And so if you have a veteran program, you want that veteran to use that program because a civilian who's never served isn't eligible for that. So one of my good friends, Jeff Winkler, taught me that. Look, we need to tell veterans about their programs so they can use them. And that's where Mission United can do that. That's where Mac and his team can do that, is get connected to the veterans programs that you have earned that benefit. It's not a handout. It's something you've earned.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. Well, as you've mentioned throughout the show, I mean, collaboration is really key.
Oh, no question.
That's, same for us. I mean, our goal is to serve individuals 60 years or older in St. Johns County, as well as their caregivers, right? That's our goal. But there's only so much we can do.
Right.
Right. And so collaborating with all the other organizations, whether that be a nonprofit or whether that be, a government agency, collaborating together so that we can best serve our seniors. And that's what you talk about with veterans, collaborating together to best serve our veterans. So we have about a minute and a half left on the show here. I'll give you the last word. What do you want to say to our veterans out there as we close out the show?
Well, I appreciate the service of all veterans, of all eras. We're very fortunate to have men and women throughout our history who have committed to serve in the military. We all have visions of what the military looks like. I had a rude shock, I thought, when I went to Parris Island, that the drill instructors would eventually figure out they didn't have yell at me to get me to do what they wanted me to do, but they never figured that out.
They kept yelling at you.
Excuse me. So, but it's tremendous what we've been able to accomplish as a nation because of the.
And I feel like we've come a long way. I mean, we've come a long way with our service to our veterans. I was born in 1972, but so learning about the history. I mean, when our Vietnam vets came back from history, right? They weren't well received. They weren't
absolutely right.
And so we've come a long way since those years.
And much of what we have today is because of our Vietnam veterans. They said that will never happen again,
mm-hmm.
and it hasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a great veteran system because of our Vietnam vets.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Well, Mike, thank you so much for coming on the show, taking time out of your busy schedule to come on and just talk about everything that we possibly could squeeze into this short period of time. There's so much more that I'm sure that we could talk about during our time together. But that music means that it is time for our show to be over, so thank you so much. Next week, I'll have Sheriff Rob Hardwick joining me, so tune in next week, same place, same time, right here on WFOY 102.1 FM.